3 years ago, my family stood in a circle and voted to remove me from their lives. Today, they're all asking for my husband's number. This is exactly what happened. There were 7 of them at that table. 7 people who raised me, who I trusted completely, who looked me in the eye and told me my marriage was a mistake they refused to be part of. I left that house shaking. I spent that first year barely holding it together. But my husband never stopped working, never stopped building. And when the news finally broke about what he had built, I watched my phone light up for the first time in years. Every single one of them. Calling. I didn't answer a single call. Not one. But before I tell you what I said to them, you need to understand where this all started. I grew up being the good one, the daughter who called every Sunday, who showed up early to every family dinner, who sent birthday cards with handwritten notes inside. My family wasn't wealthy, but we were tight. That was always the word for us. Tight. My mother used to say family is the only thing nobody can take from you. I believed her. I built my entire identity around that belief. I was 26 when I met Marcus. I had a steady job in healthcare administration. I was saving money slowly, responsibly, the way my father always told me to. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't naive. I was careful. I was the kind of woman who read the fine print, the kind of woman who never made big decisions without thinking them through. So when I tell you what my family said about Marcus, I need you to understand exactly who they were saying it to. Marcus was not what my family expected. He was creative. He was loud in the best way. He had this energy that filled every room he walked into. He was building a small tech startup from a spare bedroom with 2 other guys. No investor money yet. No salary to speak of. Just vision and stubbornness. On our first date, he told me exactly where he was going. Laid it out like a map. I remember thinking, either this man is completely delusional, or he is the most focused person I have ever met. It turned out to be the second one. We dated for 8 months. Then he proposed on a Tuesday. No fancy restaurant. Just the 2 of us in his apartment, pizza on the counter, and a ring he had saved for over 2 years to buy. That part matters. That ring told me everything about who Marcus was. He was not a dreamer waiting for luck. He was a builder waiting for time. I said yes before he finished the sentence. The first comment came from my brother. We were at a cookout, maybe 3 weeks after I told the family I was serious about Marcus. He pulled me aside and said, "You sure about this guy? He doesn't even have a real job." I laughed it off. Marcus was building something. That takes time. Then my mother started asking quiet questions. What does his family look like? What kind of stability does he have? She wasn't cruel about it. She was just strategic. The kind of doubt that sounds like concern. My cousin made a joke at the dinner table about Marcus being a dreamer type. Everyone laughed. Marcus wasn't there that night. But I was. And I smiled along because I didn't want to make it awkward. That was my first mistake. I smiled when I should have spoken. And those small comments, those little seeds of doubt, they kept getting planted. Week after week. Until they weren't seeds anymore. 6 months after we got engaged, my aunt called me. Not to congratulate me. To warn me. She said she had done some research. She said Marcus's previous startup had failed. She said the people who worked with him before had moved on for a reason. None of it was fully true. But none of it was fully false either. His first venture had failed. He told me that himself on our second date. He believed in being honest about his losses. That was something I respected. But my family didn't see honesty. They saw risk. Then my father sat me down. My father, who I had never once disobeyed in my life. He looked at me and said, "If you marry this man, you will spend your life carrying him." I couldn't sleep that night. Or the next one. I started second-guessing things I had been completely sure about. And I think that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted me uncertain. Unsettled. Easier to redirect. 2 weeks before our wedding, my mother called a family meeting. I thought it was about the seating chart. I drove 40 minutes to get there. I walked in and they were all seated. All 7 of them. Around the dining room table, I had eaten at my whole life. My mother spoke first. She said they had talked it over, without me, and they had reached a decision as a family. She said they could not support this marriage. My uncle said if I went through with it, they would not attend the wedding. My father said he would not walk me down the aisle. He said he was doing it out of love. Out of love, those words hit me like cold water. My brother wouldn't look at me. My cousin was staring at the table. And I just stood there. I kept waiting for one of them to take it back. To laugh. To say they were being dramatic. Nobody laughed. My mother slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a list of concerns, 4 pages long. They had actually written it down. I picked up those 4 pages. I read the first line. Then I set them back down. I looked at my mother and I said, "Did you even ask me what I wanted? Did any of you?" Nobody answered. I told them Marcus had more integrity than anyone seated at that table. I told my father that a man who walks away from his daughter 2 weeks before her wedding is not doing it out of love. He is doing it out of control. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. I thought I would cry. I didn't. I was too angry for tears. My aunt tried to interrupt, and I held up my hand. I said, "I came here because I thought you called me to support me. Now I understand what this actually is." I picked up my keys. I looked at every single face. And I said, "If this is your decision, then I'm going to let you live with it." I walked out. I drove home with both hands on the wheel, the radio off, completely silent. And then I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment. And I sat there for 45 minutes, just breathing. We got married 8 days later. 14 people attended. 14. Marcus's college friends. My one coworker, who had become a real friend. A neighbor who barely knew us. No family. Not one. My father did not walk me down the aisle. I walked myself. And I will never forget that feeling. The moment I stepped through those doors alone, in my dress, with no one beside me. I had planned that walk my entire life. In my head, it looked a certain way. Reality was different. But Marcus was at the end of that aisle. And the look on his face. It got me there. The first year was brutal, honestly. We were living on savings and whatever the startup was generating, which was not much. $43,000 between us. That was it. I didn't tell my family anything because there was no family to tell. No one called on my birthday that first year. Not one person. I cried in the bathroom at work on that day so my coworkers wouldn't see. I had never felt so completely alone. About 14 months in, I hit a wall. I was exhausted from grieving people who were still alive. I was tired of waiting for a phone call that was never going to come. And I made a decision that changed everything, not about my family, about myself. I decided to stop waiting. Stop hoping they would come around. Stop measuring my happiness against their absence. I started therapy. Real, consistent therapy. Every Tuesday at 6:30. I started rebuilding from the inside out. And around the same time, something shifted with the startup. Marcus landed a meeting with a firm that had been watching the product for months. He came home one night and sat across from me at our kitchen table, the same way he had on our first date, and he laid out the map again. Except this time, the map had a destination on it. A real one. I remember thinking, he never stopped. Through all of it, he never stopped. The next 18 months were the quietest kind of busy. Marcus and his partners closed a seed round, $450,000. It wasn't life-changing money yet, but it was proof. It was real. We moved into a slightly bigger apartment. I got a promotion at work. We started saving in a way that actually felt like progress instead of survival. And through all of it, I said nothing to my family. Not because I was hiding, because I had genuinely moved on. My therapist asked me once if I miss them. I thought about it for a long time. I said, I miss who I thought they were. And that's a different kind of grief. It has a different kind of end. Marcus was working 18-hour days. I would fall asleep before him and wake up to find him still at his desk, coffee cold, completely absorbed. I watched him become someone extraordinary, quietly, without applause. And I thought they told me I would be carrying him. Look at him go. The acquisition offer came on a Wednesday morning. I was at work when Marcus called. He almost never called during the day. I stepped into a stairwell and answered. He was quiet for a second and then he said, "They offered us $8.3 million. I sat down on the stairs. Just sat right down. We had conversations over the years about what success could look like. We had said, if we ever cleared $1 million, we'd consider it a win. 8.3. I could not make my brain hold that number. We closed the deal 6 weeks later. And within 48 hours of that news hitting publicly, through a business contact who knew my cousin, my phone started ringing. First it was my cousin, then my aunt, then my brother, then my mother. All within the same week. My father took a little longer. He called on a Sunday. Of course he did. The messages were all warm, excited for us, proud, as if the last 3 years had been a misunderstanding. My cousin actually texted me, "I always believed in Marcus," word for word. I showed it to Marcus and he just looked at me and said, "What do you want to do?" I already knew the answer. I called my mother back first. Not because I had forgiven everything, but because she is still my mother. That call lasted 11 minutes. She cried. I didn't. I was calm in a way I hadn't expected. I told her I was not angry. I told her I was not interested in pretending the last 3 years hadn't happened. I told her that Marcus and I were well, that we were genuinely happy, and that I hoped she could sit with what her choice had cost us both. I did not invite anyone to visit. I did not hand out Marcus's number. I did not ask for apologies, because the ones I received didn't come from honesty. They came from circumstance. My father and I have spoken twice since then. It's still careful and slow. Maybe it will get somewhere. Maybe it won't. What I know for certain is this: I did not need their permission then. I do not need their validation now. I walked down that aisle alone. And everything I have built since then. I built it standing on my own 2 feet. If someone in your life is doubting the person you chose, ask yourself who is really afraid and what they are afraid of losing. Because sometimes the people who say they're protecting you are protecting themselves. If this story hit something real for you, subscribe to Dossier Karma. We tell these stories because they matter. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had family turn on you for a choice they didn't understand? I read every single one.